All right. This is my UX presentation, and it's around the progression of the branch rules MVC. My name is Michael Lee, and this is actually my first UX showcase as a source code designer. And when I joined the team had a MVC roadmap where everything was laid out really neatly. And when I came in, I had a lot of questions, and because of those questions, we actually turned the MVC and reduced the MVC down to a smaller chunk and multiple MVCs to move things forward. And this showcase is going to be a story of how we got from a large MVC to a smaller MVC. So branch rules is the area that we're focusing on, and branch rules is actually a new term that we coined, and it's the encapsulation of rules such as like protected branches, merge request approvals, status checks, and all of these types of rules and settings are actually centered around one thing: branches. And from a previous design exploration and research, we found out that it actually made sense to users to organize all of these settings and rules that are targeted around branches to be organized with branches. Because at the moment, this is what we have right now, where each of these settings are in different places. And as a result, if you were going to start working on one area, you may have to create a protected branch for it. Then return to merge request approvals to set those rules. And all of these are in different pages. And maybe you want to add some status checks to those branch rules too. So we're making people jump across different worlds, different pages and things like that to essentially manage and navigate things around one branch or a branch pattern, such as something with an asterisk. So the idea was to consolidate all of these things into a view where you could set your branch protections, merge request approvals, and status checks all in one area. And this was kind of the idea of it, where you could control the branch name and then add the protections and merge request approvals. And this is where I came into the picture in source code, where this was the direction the team was heading down. And as you can see, the idea was to allow users to view the different settings as well as edit the settings as well in one place. If we extrapolate this out, we would then consolidate all these different rules under a new section called branch rules. And from there, you can see the different branches that have protections on them or merge request settings on them. And you would can navigate and view everything and manage everything from a branch-centric view. So the goals was to organize the settings by branches and eventually get to an area where people can manage settings that are targeted by branches or organized by branches. This also meant that we would have to restructure, replace, and redirect users from the existing sections like protected branches and merge request approvals into to redirect them to branch rules. So this would be like changing a pretty fundamental area of our product, such as merge request approvals and protected branches, and dealing with how we would communicate that with customers and our users. So this was the rough outline of the original MVC, where we would list the branches, display and edit the rules, consider any data models that we would have to introduce or change to accommodate for this. And then once we have our branch rules set up, then we would have to look into removing existing sections and then redirecting them back to branch rules. And as a person who was actually new to the group, coming into this was a little bit overwhelming for me. First of all, with the display rules, The initial design had this kind of layout, which made kind of sense, but we had a different editing paradigm for controlling branch protections and a different way of editing things for merge request approvals. And that's something that exists today in the product, and we're just carrying that through. But I was trying to figure out how to solve this, while at the same time, we got issues like this where users were able to edit things in batches or multiple handle multiple branches as once via an API, and via the UI, we can only do things at one at a time, and we're displaying information that's kind of different between both views, depending if you are seeing things from an API versus the UI. So these two things kind of gave me pause and kind of concerned that like I didn't have my head around this whole space to like come up with a holistic solution on how to edit. Then we were talking about migrating data models. As we were introducing this idea of branch rules, the question came up whether we would want to create a whole new database structure schema to manage this, and thus replacing what we already had with protected branches and merge request approvals. Do we need to create a whole database schema to handle this? I was tagged into this issue, and it caused me pause again, because to me it felt like a big change, like a fundamental change where I didn't understand the picture clearly. And then as part of that, if we were going to move ahead with everything, we would have to signal that certain features such as approval rules, merge request approval rules, and protected branches have moved to a new area called branch rules. All of this kind of gave me concern. And if we went back to the goals of this whole MVC, the end goal is to manage settings in one area, targeted by branches. But the one area that as a group we were really confident around was the idea of organizing the settings by branches. So going with the direction of potentially just a read-only view of moving all the information into one area and displaying that so that people could view everything under one branch rule. So you could view merge request approvals, any protections, any status checks in one area. And we felt that was the right way to move forward. But how did we get to this point? It started off with just async communication in an issue about presenting perhaps a different direction. And the whole team got involved with that, engineering managers, the PM, and we quickly rallied around whether this was a good idea or not. And through the discussions, which started as an async, we were able to raise any concerns from the engineering standpoint, because there was potentially halting some of the work that was already in progress for the milestone. And there was a lot of questions around clarity of what are we going to display instead on the front end. So I think this was a good example of collaboration within the team around using both async and sync discussions in tandem to bring clarity to the problem that we wanted to solve. And with that, we were able to come up with a new approach to our MVC. So initially, this was our MVC where we would do all these things. And after our discussions, we decided to focus more on just the read-only, the listing and displaying of branches as our first MVC, and then handle everything else down the road if we see that it's necessary. And this is bringing that focus of the user value of organizing the rules by branches and allowing them to see it like that. And for editing experiences, we would redirect them to the existing spots right now. And the rationale around this, even though it surfaces some duplicate areas of presenting information, gives us time to figure out how we might best approach editing the rules in the future, and also handling some of those edge case scenarios about whether we want to handle multiple edits in the UI or not. And this is a wrap up of like how we took this branch rule MVC, which was nebulous, and kind of breaking it down to make it a little bit more clear around how we were going to tackle it, from displaying the rules initially and then editing the rules as a separate follow-on MVC. And that's it for this. Any questions?
Is there any precedent, or do you know of any other teams that are doing something this way, where like before moving the content, they're kind of putting a skeleton in place before that'll direct you to where it currently is?
Yes, I know in settings we've moved things around in the past. I think we use alerts and things like that inside the setting area to say, hey, these settings have moved. I forgot which one specifically, but there is precedence for that. And there's even a rule around potentially keeping that alert there around for a couple of milestones. Like I think 9 was the number. It seems pretty long, but the idea is that you display it once, and if the user dismisses it, then you wouldn't show it again. The reason it's 9 is it matches the upgrade cycle of all different versions of GitLab, and that seems like the number that was chosen in the past. So yeah, in a rough kind of way, that's the approach that we would be planning to inform users that things have moved.
But this maybe I misunderstood, but at the end, it seemed like you were saying that you would be kind of doing it a little bit differently than that, in that you would organize things in a new section that would link back. So we've definitely moved and linked to the new place, but this is the opposite. This is not moving yet, but like creating a new place, but linking back to where it is before, which is interesting. So that's why I haven't seen it done before. So I'm wondering if anyone has done it that way previously, because it seems new to me.
Yes, thanks for the clarification, and I agree with that. It's not moving and putting alerts on the page. A similar kind of pattern, I would say, is when we allow people to toggle between different experiences. So within the editor, within the wiki, you can toggle between the rich text editing experience and the current experience. So this kind of idea of toggling past and future kind of states is where I'm coming from, and maybe I'm just taking that along with me to say, yes, here's new places. But the idea here with the new area is that we can potentially surface a link to a feedback issue or something like that, and collect kind of feedback of how we're organizing information as we're refining it about how we might edit things all in one place. So we're not breaking the existing experience of editing protected branches or merge request approvals while delivering some kind of value of, well, if you want to view everything all in one spot, how is this experience for you? So that's the motivation behind introducing something new, but also providing a fallback or going back to the old way to view and edit things, because it's more familiar before we make a bigger change that's more shocking, in my opinion.
Yeah, I didn't have a question, but I just had a comment that this change to the UX for this feature makes documentation a great deal more simple, because it is kind of end to end for a given branch. So it's really good to see. It's definitely worth doing, and not only is it better and more intuitive for customers, but it is actually much simpler to document. And it's one of those things that I would probably say, if we had our time over again, maybe we would have implemented it this way, just because, it's less jumping between things, which means less jumping around the documentation as well. So yeah, it's good to see. And yeah, it's good that it's been broken down this way, because you can get feedback on the UX before committing to any data model changes, which are harder to reverse. So yeah, that's good stuff.
Michael, I was just going to ask, does the sort of, in inverted commas, slower pace of change also better suit users, do you think? And that it provides them, an opportunity to get used to the new, what will be the new UI arrangement sort of in increments, as opposed to, logging in one day and finding that everything's suddenly moved.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it, where we're introducing something new. You can try it out, or you can like just go to the existing sections within settings to view things, and then it gives the opportunity to compare and contrast as well. So I think it's an interesting use case where we have we found this opportunity, and the group rallied around this idea, and kind of reducing the scope of the MVC as well as the risk of the MVC. I think that's really powerful. Yeah, because you're not changing and moving everything all around on day one. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely a good approach, I think. Thanks for that.
Cool. Right.